Hey everybody, today's June 22nd. We got Game 7 of the NBA Finals tonight, but unfortunately, that means that we're about to hit the dead period of sports for a couple months here. So now seems like a fun time to decide which team in each state has the most dominant college football program as of 2025. So we're going to be filling in this map as we go, and let's get started. All right, so we're going to be going left to right here, start in the Northwest. Options for Washington are really just Washington and Washington State. Washington State currently doesn't even have a conference right now. I believe it's still just them and Oregon State and the Pac-12, so like the Pac-2. So it's a pretty easy one. Washington in the Big Ten, pretty strong program, made it to the national championship a couple years ago, and are really strong. Working our way down the coast here for Oregon, it's a no-brainer. Same situation. We got Oregon or Oregon State. Oregon State's the other school in the Pac-12 slash Pac-2 at the moment. Oregon's the easy pick. They were number one entering the playoff last year for losing to Ohio State pretty brutally in the Rose Bowl, and they should be a top 10 team again this year. All right, third we got California. This first one where there's somewhat of a decision. Potential contenders are Stanford and Cal in the ACC, but it's not them. They have horrible fan bases right now. And then you also got UCLA in Los Angeles, but I think USC is definitely still in a better spot. Used to be the premier program of college football just 10, 15 years ago, and they've definitely taken a big step back, but still got Lincoln Riley, still got a beautiful stadium, and I think USC will eventually turn it around in the Big Ten here. Next state up is Nevada. Two options here, really just the Nevada Wolfpack and UNLV. Nevada's got a pretty good basketball program. Had the Martin brothers, made the tournament a decent amount of times over the last 10 years. But for football, I think we got to go with UNLV. They had a really strong season last year in the Mountain West, and they've got Dan Mullen. So UNLV might be a top 25 team here in 2025. Moving our way up to Idaho. Really no other contender here. It's definitely Boise State. Really strong season last year, led by Heisman runner-up Ashton Jeanty. He's gone now, going in the NFL to the Raiders, but it should be pretty solid again this year. Probably not the same quality of season, but Boise State is the clear dominant program in Idaho. Working our way up to Montana. This is a tough one. Obviously, not a lot of good college football programs in the state of Montana. Really, it was just between Montana, the Grizzlies, and the Montana State Bobcats. Montana State won last year's matchup, and they've won six of the last eight. I'd be lying if I said I knew damn near anything about these programs going into 2025, so we're going to give the nod to the program that's had more success head to head lately. All right, moving down to Wyoming. Wyoming's really the only option here. A Mountain West program, so relatively big compared to Montana for sure, but Wyoming's been struggling lately. They had a coach for, I believe, like 2 decades, and then last year was their first year with a new head coach. Had a really tough season, ended up finishing 3-9, so hopefully they can turn it around a little bit this year, maybe compete for a bowl game. All right, moving a little bit southwest here to the state of Utah. Really just two options here, the Utah Utes and the BYU Cougars. Both recently joined the Big 12, BYU coming from the Mountain West and Utah coming from the Pac 12. Utah had super high expectations last year, had a lot of injury troubles, and didn't live up to their expectations at all. BYU wasn't very highly regarded coming into last year and had a really good season. They're actually still in the college football playoff hunt in week 12. Finished, I believe, third or fourth in the Big 12. And they got a lot of money. I don't know if you guys are following basketball, but they got the number one recruit in the country coming in next year. Got a lot of donors in Mormon country, and I believe there's a lot more Mormons at BYU than Utah. So I think BYU's positioned really well moving into 2025. Down to the state of Arizona, two options here, the Arizona Wildcats and what we'll be going with, the Arizona State Sun Devils. Arizona State had an incredible year last year. Their quarterback's returning, but they are losing Cam Scatabo. I believe they're going to be a top 25 team to start the year. They have a bright young coach and a lot of good vibes around the program. The fan base is really excited. Won the Big 12 last year, made the college football playoff, and had Texas down on the ropes. They had a 4th and 10, I believe, in overtime. If Texas doesn't come up with a play there, then they have a huge upset. Arizona State's looking really good with a young head coach moving forward. Moving into the Central Time Zone, we'll start at the top here with North Dakota. There's a school called North Dakota that's decent in the FCS, but North Dakota State has been a powerhouse in the FCS for a lot of years now. Probably the most dominant program of the last decade. They seem like they're always in the national championship. They're competing a lot against JMU before they got promoted to the FBS in the Sun Belt. But North Dakota State's produced a lot of big names. You got Carson Wentz, Trey Lance for quarterbacks. They should be in the mix again next year based off that reputation. So, Fargo, North Dakota, you got something, and it's North Dakota State football. Next up, we got South Dakota. Very similar football landscape as North Dakota, with the state school being a little bit stronger. So there's South Dakota and South Dakota State. South Dakota State has ripped off 13 of the last 15 and the last two against South Dakota. Not quite the program that North Dakota State is, but the Jackrabbits are the clear top dog in South Dakota. Going down to Nebraska, no other options than to go with the Big Red. Nebraska used to be a powerhouse back in the 90s, one of the best fan bases, I would say top 5 fan base in the country. They always pack out the stadium, incredibly loud, and they've just been so let down for what feels like my whole life, at least since I've been watching. But we got Matt Rule. The program's headed in somewhat the right direction. They had a decent year last year. Hopefully they can go like 7-5, 8-4, keep trending up slowly and give that rabid fan base something to look forward to moving into the future here. Next up, we got Kansas. Two good options here. You wouldn't think of Kansas as much of a football state, but they've actually got two programs projected in the top 30 of the ESPN FPI going into next year. The Jayhawks are in a good spot. The Wildcats are in a good spot. I'm going to take Kansas State. They've got a really good quarterback returning in Avery Johnson. I think that program's going to have a really strong year, compete for the Big 12 again. Scooting down to Oklahoma, two major college football programs here, the Oklahoma State Cowboys in the Big 12 and the new to the SEC Oklahoma Sooners. Year 3 for Brent Venables coming up here. Definitely a disappointing first couple years, and he's certainly on the hot seat. But Oklahoma State had a horrendous year last year, one of their worst I've ever seen. And Oklahoma's got their new quarterback coming back. Um, Freshman, so Jackson Arnold's gone, but their freshman, I'm forgetting his name right now, who showed some promise. He's going to be back running the offense. So Oklahoma, really hard schedule in the SEC. They got kind of screwed. Texas came in, got an easy schedule, and Oklahoma got one of the toughest in the country. But really strong fan base. They love their football there, so we're gonna ride with the Sooners. Right, everything's bigger in Texas. That's certainly the case for football. They've got a ton of FBS football programs there. Texas is going to be the choice, but Texas A&M, 12th Man is a great program. You got Big 12 schools like TCU, Baylor, Texas Tech. A lot of good choices here, but we're going to have to go with Texas, who had a really good year last year. They've got Arch Manning leading the offense this year, who's actually the Heisman favorite at the moment. We haven't seen him play much, but the ceiling is obviously super high, so he's going to be hoping to have a really strong year and potentially go number 1 in the draft next year. Next up, moving out east, we've got the LSU Tigers. You got Louisiana Tech, Louisiana Lafayette as mid-majors in that state. Decent programs, but you're not going to compete against LSU. Death Valley, one of the hardest places to play in the country, especially as at night. Definitely on my bucket list to get to that stadium at some point. Had a decent year last year, not quite what they've been looking for under Brian Kelly since he got there, but could certainly be in the mix for the college football playoff again this year. And LSU ain't going anywhere anytime soon. Moving north into Arkansas, Arkansas State, another solid mid-major in the Sun Belt, but we're going to go with the Razorbacks, who actually have the toughest schedule in the entire country going into 2025. It's going to be really hard for them to make a bowl, but the program's not in a horrible spot. I wouldn't call them a bottom feeder in the SEC, but it would be shocking to see them in contention at the top. Arkansas is going to be the choice here. Moving on to Missouri, you guys are going to start noticing a trend here as we get into the eastern half of the country. It's going to be a lot of the SEC and it's going to be a lot of the Big Ten. Missouri's easy choice here, sitting right in the middle of the state in Columbia. Not a big college football stadium, kind of slept on as a program. I feel like usually we think that they're going to have a pretty bad year in the SEC, and they often surprise people with a good year coming in at like 8-4, 9-3. Still haven't ever made the college football playoff. Never really been in contention for that, but they've had a lot of good years lately under Eli, so Missouri is going to be the choice. Next up, we got one of the toughest decisions of the video. Two options here between Iowa and Iowa State. Iowa of the Big Ten and Iowa State of the Big 12. ESPN actually has Iowa ranked a little bit higher than ISU, and they've had more success over the last decade for sure. But I really like where Iowa State's at. They've got a really strong quarterback coming back in Rocco Becht. Matt Campbell's a great young coach. Hopefully, he doesn't get poached for one of the big schools one day. But if he doesn't, Iowa State's in a really good spot. Made it to the Big 12 championship last year, got blown out by ASU, but they could easily be back in that game and maybe come out on top this year. For Minnesota, it's going to be the Golden Gophers. I've never really noticed how strange this logo looks. It's kind of a weird shape for an M, but the more you know. So Minnesota's pretty good program in the Big Ten. Feels like they're always in the middle of the pack, coming in at like 6-6, 7-5. Always have a really strong run game. Use the elements to their advantage, and I've got them finishing about 7-5 again this year. So we're gonna go with the Golden Gophers. Transitioning to the Great Lakes states for Wisconsin, there's no other choice but the Badgers. A little bit disappointing under Luke Fickell so far. Finished 5-7 last year, which is definitely not where the nation thought they'd come in last year. I expect them to have a bit of a better year, not make any crazy noise, but they should make a bowl game this year. Camp Randall's an awesome atmosphere. Wisconsin fans deserve a bit better than they've been getting lately. Not quite as bad as Nebraska, but kind of a similar vibe in that I think they're going to start turning it around here. So there's two Big Ten schools in Illinois, Northwestern and the Fighting Illini, which we're going to go with here. I really love Brett Bielema. Actually, just listened to him on Part of My Take a couple days ago. Seems like he really has things reined in at Illinois. Always have a strong run game under that coach, and they have a really good quarterback right now with Luke Altmaier. My favorite school, Tennessee, actually tried to poach him, and he decided to stay loyal to Illinois. So that's a really good sign for the program's health, and I expect Illinois to be pretty good this year. Moving back down into SEC country, Mississippi State and Ole Miss are the major schools here. Uh, it's not going to be Mississippi State, unfortunately. They were bad last year as expected. We're actually pretty competitive in a lot of games that we thought they wouldn't be. But with Mike Leach passing, year two coming up with a new coach, certainly going to be another tough year. It'd be very surprising if Mississippi State can make a bowl game, so we're going to go with Ole Miss. Ole Miss just missed the playoff last year. If they would have beat Florida in the last week of the season, they likely would have been in the playoff, but that didn't happen. Lane Kiffin's still a pretty strong coach. They've got a pretty good NIL situation there. The hype isn't going to be the same as it was in 2024, but Ole Miss certainly could be a playoff dark horse still. Scooting over to Alabama here. Do I really need to say anything? No. Next up, we got Florida. This is always going to be a tough one. Feels like every year the power dynamic in Florida shifts. You got three major college football brands with Florida, Miami, and Florida State. Florida State's down big right now. They had that great season 2 years ago and just an absolute disaster last year. They'll certainly be somewhere in between those last 2 years in 2025. Miami had a pretty good year, one of their best in a while, with Cam Ward, who went number one in the draft last year. He's gone. Expectations are a little bit lower, but they still should be pretty solid and somewhat of a weak ACC, although it is improved, I think. But it's not going to be Miami. I hate to say it. I absolutely hate the Gators, but I do think DJ Lagway is that guy. It sucks. Because I was a big like Nico's going to be a lot better than DJ. Now Nico left us for UCLA. Um, and I think Florida is going to be really good. They have another impossible schedule. I know Arkansas is the toughest. I think Florida might be second. They're in kind of a weird spot with their coach at the moment. Um, it's going to be a big like wait and see, but if I remove my bias, I am a believer in Florida in 2025, unfortunately. All right, for Georgia, it's going to be the Bulldogs. I do want to show some love here to the Georgia Tech program right now. I think Brent Key's doing a really good job, and I think they might be contenders in the ACC, surprisingly. But they're not better than Georgia. No, they did almost beat Georgia in Athens last year. They took them to like 6 overtimes, crazy game in the final week of the season. But Georgia's Georgia. You got Kirby Smart. You got that money. You got that history that is somewhat new. They haven't, dominated like Alabama has, but the last 5 years they've been so dominant and they could easily win it all again this year. All right, sticking in SEC country, state of Tennessee is going to go to the Tennessee Vols. Now, hear me out on this. So Diego Pavia went on Will Compton, Taylor Lewan's Bussin' with the Boys podcast a couple weeks ago and said that Vanderbilt's going to have a better year than Tennessee, and Vanderbilt's about to be the school dominating in the state of Tennessee. That's not going to happen, Diego. Okay? It's not. He is saying everyone wants to be in Nashville. They've got a lot of money. They've got him, and they're going to show that, you can win there. Credit to Vanderbilt. They're a lot better than they were a few years ago, but it's just not going to happen. They might have more, or I don't even think they have more money than the Vols. I think it's going to be pretty similar, which it wasn't before. So kudos to them for getting their bread up, but you don't have Vol Nation for Vandy. You can't replicate that. The sustainability of Tennessee, yeah, we've been down for a while before we started to climb back up here. But Tennessee's always, until the day I die, till the world ends, there's no chance Vanderbilt will be the dominant program in the state of Tennessee. I don't care if Vanderbilt has a better year than Tennessee every once in a while. The fan base is always going to win out here. We've got some of the best fans in the country, and it's just not happening. I'm sorry. It's not happening. Got two states at once here. I'm going to hit Kentucky and Indiana. Start with Kentucky. This is another really tough one between the Kentucky Wildcats and the Louisville Cardinals. Louisville had a pretty good last year. Kentucky was a bit disappointing. Their FPI, Kentucky's a little bit higher, but I'm not a big believer in that program. Mark Stoops wanted out, and he didn't get a job that he thought he'd get, so now he's back at Kentucky. It's just kind of an awkward situation there. I don't think Kentucky's going to make a bowl game. That's a bit of a hot take, maybe, but I believe in Louisville to be in the mix in the ACC, probably have like an 8-4 season, so we're going to go with them. And then for Indiana, one of the most controversial teams of 2024, made the college football playoff after going 11-1 or 10-2. I forget if they lost in one of the last games, but there was a lot of argument that they played absolutely nobody. The only tough game they played was against Ohio State, where they got their butts kicked. didn't perform very well in the college football playoff first round against Notre Dame. Ended up only losing by 2 scores, but they were getting killed from the start and scored a lot lately. So Indiana, again, another easy schedule. I'd be very surprised if they replicate last year and make the playoff, but it's definitely going to be the Hoosiers for the state of Indiana right now. Moving up to Michigan, states are starting to get small here, so the logos are as well, but we're going to definitely go with the Wolverines here. Won it all 2 years ago, had the whole Connor Stallions cheating scandal that's still ongoing. Wasn't a great team last year, but they did win in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Alabama as like 21-point dogs. It was kind of absurd. Like super rainy first half. It was like a mud bowl. Really fun game actually. But Michigan's still the top dog of the state. Michigan State fans won't want to admit that they're the little brother, but fortunately for football, there's no debate at this point. It's got to be the Wolverines. Up next, we've got the biggest rival of the Wolverines. It's going to be Ohio State. Do want to give a little shout out to the Ohio Bobcats who won the MAC last year. Pretty solid program there. You got Cincinnati in the Big 12. They didn't have a very good year. They probably won't have a good year next year. It's the national champions. It's wide receiver U. It's Jeremiah Smith. It's Ohio State. They're going to be a top five team again this year and could easily win it all. All right, we're going to move up to the Northeast here and then work our way down the East Coast. Maine does not have good college football. Definitely the worst state in any we've covered so far, worse than the Montanas, the Dakotas of the world. We really have only one option here. There's only one football program within FBS or FCS, and it's Maine, the Black Bears, who went 5-7 in the FCS last year. You gotta get your football up, Maine. No pro sports up there, no colleges. I know it's beautiful. You got the forests, but what are y'all doing in Maine? Staying in the Northeast, we're going to move on to New Hampshire, where it's going to be the New Hampshire Wildcats, who actually have an FCS program, so something they don't have in Vermont. They went 8-5 last year, so shout out the Wildcats. For Massachusetts, only real answer here can be Boston College. Actually had a pretty good year last year, going 7-6 in the ACC. A bit surprising. Bill O'Brien's a really good coach. Didn't have a ton of success in the NFL. Had a good little stint with Houston for a while. But I think he's the right guy for this program. And if you can get 7-6 seasons out of BC, that's doing a pretty good job. So it's going to be the Eagles for Massachusetts. We've got another sweet looking logo. It's going to be the Rhode Island Rams. They actually had a really good year last year in the FCS, going 11-3, losing in the second round of the playoffs. So Rhode Island got a better college football program than Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. Good for them, the smallest state, but not the worst program. For the state of Connecticut, it's got to be the Yukon Huskies, who actually converted from FCS to FBS before 2024. They have no conference. I think there's only so Notre Dame's independent. I think there might be one other, but it'll be interesting to see if UConn can get into a conference at some point. They actually had a pretty good year last year. They went 6-6 and then beat North Carolina in the I think it was either the Fenway or the Pinstripe Bowl. So they finished 7-6. Good for UConn. Obviously known as a basketball school, winning two of the last three national championships, but be pretty neat if they could develop something of a football program. For New York, it's going to be the Syracuse Orange. I actually had a really successful year last year. I got to make it up to the Carrier Dome to watch my Hokies completely collapse and lose in overtime. That's a tough memory. I'll stick with me, but they had a really good year with Kyle McCord. He's gone now, but Fran Brown's got the program headed in the right direction, I think, and they should be in the middle of the pack in the ACC again. So good for Syracuse because that's better than where they have been. Moving down to the state of Pennsylvania, obviously going to be the Nittany Lions here. Got Pitt, who's a decent program in the ACC, but it's going to be Penn State. Had a really good year last year, made it to the college football semis. They've always been known as the team that can never win the big game. They won some relatively big games last year. Debatable if they won the big one still. But they got Drew Aller coming back, who's in the mix to be the top prospect taken in the draft. James Franklin seems like he finally has Penn State rolling at that top level, competing with Ohio State in the Big Ten. Um, I don't think they're going to be as good as people are saying. I think they're going to make the playoff, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're a first round exit. I like this football program. I'm not as tuned into the Big Ten as the SEC and the ACC, but I would be very pleased to see if Penn State could pull it off and beat Ohio State and maybe even win it all this year. Moving deeper into Appalachia, we've got the West Virginia Mountaineers. Really good college town in Morgantown. They know how to party there. They love their college football. Hasn't been one of the best programs in the country, but they could always turn it around. They could always be in the mix. You never know when they're going to break out. They'll get their shine one day. Wasn't last year. Let's be honest, it probably won't be this year, but at some point West Virginia is going to get that thing rolling. Next up, we got my home state and my alma mater. It's going to be Virginia Tech. The only other argument you're going to have is the University of Virginia. ODU's decent school in the Sun Belt, but it's not UVA. I'll admit UVA has a better basketball program. UVA has a better baseball program. UVA has a better swimming, track. Actually, maybe not track, but most sports, UVA dominates compared to us. They got more money, they got bigger donors, they got more nerds. I, my sister went to UVA, so I can't fully hate them. But for football, it's still Virginia Tech. We have a fan base. They do not have a fan base. We love our football in Blacksburg. Charlottesville loves their wine and books and stuff. It's disappointing what we've been since the Beamer era. We've never lived up to the hype. We're meant to be decent again this year. We had really high expectations last year and lost like every one score game. I have a feeling it's going to happen again under Brent Pry, and we're going to have to restart. But as of now, Virginia Tech is still well clear of the UVA football program. Now, this is different than Tennessee and Vanderbilt because I could see Virginia Tech really falling off the map here in the next 10 years. If UVA keeps skyrocketing with the NIL, maybe gets the stadium situation a little better, I think there's a way they can get their fan base relatively similar to VT. I'm scared of it. I fear it. We're nowhere near that point yet, but UVA could come up. But it's VT for now. Let's go Hokies. Let's go 8-4 this year. Let's shock the world and go 8-4. Why not? That's all I want. North Carolina. This is a fun one because you've got four different ACC programs here. You've got Duke, you got Wake Forest, you've got North Carolina, which I'm guessing a lot of you would expect me to put here with Bill Belichick, but I don't like that situation right now. It's been quiet on the Jordan Hudson front the last couple weeks, but that feels like it could bubble up again. UNC does not have a good fan base. Duke does not have a good fan base for basketball. Wake's is okay. NC State actually does care about football. They're usually one of the like upper middle ACC programs. I think they're going to finish in that range again this year, probably like a 7-5 team. So I'm going to give NC State the nod here on the healthiest college football program. Another debatable one in the Carolinas here, but for South Carolina, I'm going to give the nod to Clemson over USC. Reason is Debo or Dabo. I'm sorry, I was thinking of Debo Samuel because I'm a Commanders fan, but Dabo Sweeney, he's a maniac. He's a weird guy, but he's had a lot of success. They got Cade Klubnik coming in, who's a Heisman contender, and I think Clemson just has that firm stability that I don't think they'll fall off a cliff. Now, for South Carolina, the Gamecocks, they got a lot going for them right now. They've got Frank Beamer's son as their head coach. He's a character, and they have a really promising quarterback with Sellers, but I'm not fully sold on him yet. I think people think he's like the guy could completely change the trajectory of the program. I think South Carolina's they had a great year last year, almost made the playoff, and people expect them to make it or be just short again this year. I think they're going to take a bit of a step back and be like a 7-5 program rather than a 9-3 one. They'll be playing football in Alaska, and for Hawaii, it's going to be the Rainbow Eagles, Rainbow Warriors. Sorry. So that's going to wrap up the strongest college football programs going into 2025 for each state. Had a lot of fun making this one. It's a lot of easy states, but especially out east, there's some really tough choices here. So love to hear what you guys agree with, what you guys disagree with, who you guys think are going to win the national championship coming up here in 2025. If you guys enjoyed this, please throw it a like. Would love if you guys subscribe. There's going to be a lot more college football and other sports content coming your way soon. So thank you guys for watching.